Wow. Hey, how's it going, guys? Another week of coffee with Kofi and Carl.
Coffee with Kofi and Karl presents to you this edition, this edition of The Courage to Be Disliked. What's up, Kofi?
Oh man, I'm living life to the fullest right now, man. It's Saturday, it's a beautiful day. I did some cleaning in my house a little bit, and now I get to sit here and talk about an amazing book as well. So I'm pretty excited. How are you, my man?
I'm great, bro. I'm great. I'm coming off of a pretty productive week, man. I had a lot of big things to take care of, and you know, um, big tasks. And this book talks a lot about the separation of tasks. We'll get into that in a second. And
Mm-hmm.
and I just embraced them, man. There were some tasks that I quite frankly was not really looking forward to, and just sticky stuff. And
Mm,
I
okay.
took it on. I took it on head on, man, and got through it. So I'm feeling really good as well, too, man. And getting ready for a productive day ahead.
I like it. I like it. Okay, so we're gonna dive into some interesting
Yeah,
things. But
yeah,
before we go there, I have a question because I'm sure people are like, this is on people's mind, right? Like we have the show, coffee with Carl and Kofi, right?
yeah.
So I'm curious, like, how do you drink your coffee, man? Like,
Oh, funny you should ask, man.
yeah,
I just right before this recording had to run to the grocery store after my morning walk to
yeah.
get the Chobani French vanilla creamer. They're not
Ooh.
paying me to plug this, but that's my favorite creamer. So I love Pete's medium roast coffee, and I use the
Mm,
French press. I like brewing the coffee on a kettle and then doing the whole thing in the French
mm.
press. Like there's nothing more satisfying than like just slowly
I
emptying that plunger down.
that,
It just was like, ah, and like the lights coming through, and the whole thing of the mornings here. I live here in Denver, so we just have
yeah.
epic sunrises, and how my space is designed. There's just like light coming in everywhere, and then yeah, and then just like pouring
Mm.
the sizzling hot coffee, with just a little bit of the Chobani French vanilla. Makes me
Oh,
happy. Makes me real
that's a
happy.
commercial right there. I love it. That's a
So Chobani, hit me up if you need a deal with your boy.
yeah.
But yeah, man, that's my coffee routine. I'm
Mm,
trying. I drink a lot of it though, and
yeah.
I don't know. I don't really get like the jitters or anything like that. I just genuinely like the taste of coffee, and I
Hmm.
think I think if anything, I'm just like really in love with having a cup of it to like sip on, especially as I do these types of things. But I think we all know that maybe coffee is not the healthiest thing. So trying
Yeah.
to find
Yeah.
I'm trying to find that
Balance.
middle ground with it.
Yeah.
How about you? It's a good question.
Well, yeah. So I'd say like I drink a lot of tea actually. I mix it up. I do tea and coffee, every once in a while.
Yeah.
And so right now today I'm actually at this place called the Common House, shout out to them, and I'm drinking some black dog coffee.
Mm.
So I looked
Daw?
this up.
Daw?
Yeah, Black Dog Coffee. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
never heard of it.
So this is interesting. It's actually a Blanchard's coffee, and it has a little bit of a story behind it. So I was actually a little fascinated by this. So let me read it to you guys. So the legend of Black Dog is a staple of Richmond, Virginia folklore. It is hard to parse the truth from fiction when it comes to accounts of Black Dog, a stray that roamed neighborhoods in the West End of Richmond for years. Some people consider Black Dog a protector, a benevolent watchman, others viewed as a scourge that need to be captured and put down. Everyone agrees, though, he was a wild, free-spirited that avoided capture and domestication despite countless attempts by city and animal control and a number of residents of the neighborhoods he roamed. So, what people agree with is that Black Dog treated humans as if they were fire, getting close enough for their warmth, but even occasionally licking the feet of children, but never allowing himself to be touched. We can't help but admire the legendary Black Dart's wild heart and free spirit. So I have to say that this is probably the most cultured cup of coffee I have ever drinking. So I
This
thought that
is
was quite fascinating.
not
But
a sponsored ad
generally,
by Back Dog, but that sounds amazing. I'm ready to go buy like a pouch of it. That sounds awesome.
yeah, with a
Like a
little bit of
cup
oat
too.
milk in there.
Well, cool, brother. Well, it's good to be with you, man. We've been off for a few weeks now. We're so busy, man.
Yeah,
It's
man.
like two young guys working on becoming international characters. I know that you were down in the islands for some stuff and traveling, and I'm over here just running the company and got my head down. So it's just really, honestly, a pleasure to be back with you and be back with the audience this week. So,
Yeah.
what are we talking about for the courage to be disliked this week? What's on our
Mm.
agenda?
Well, you brought in some like pretty interesting topics before we started diving into, our drinks for the day. One was separation of tasks. So, I'd definitely love to like, talk a little bit about that because didn't you mention that, just this last week you had an experience that related to that separation of tasks?
Was I?
Maybe, I don't know, maybe, yeah. Maybe that was the story I'll tell myself as you.
Well, it's funny.
Yeah.
This is coffee conversations with Karl and Kofi, and so one of the things we do here is we keep it real. And
Yeah.
so yeah, man, I had a lot of big tasks on my plate this week, both personally and professionally. And I was excuse me, I was listening to the audio book again during my walk this morning, and the book uses the example of a parent and a child, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
for any parents listening, you're probably familiar with trying to impress upon your child why they should do their homework or why they should study
Yeah.
because you want them to get good grades so that they can whatever, get a
Hmm.
good job. And for children that might be listening, you're probably accustomed to that as well too, and you're probably familiar with your parent telling you this thing and maybe sort of resisting it a little bit because it's not what you actually want to do for yourself. So the book talks about this concept of Adlerian psychology, and it's something I've been thinking a lot about lately because as a parent, you might be thinking that you're doing right by your child to tell them that it's in their best interest. But if you actually take a step back to question
Mm.
what the root of that suggestion being in their best interest is coming from, like, hey, for instance, are you doing this because your child is just like in your space and you want them to like go away and go in their room and study, or are you doing it because you want to be able to posture right in front of like your peers and your colleagues
Mm-hmm.
who have kids going to a certain school and you want your child to go to a certain school, right? Like
Mm.
if that's the case, it's actually coming from the wrong place. And it's not actually your task to impress upon the child why it's in their best interest. And that's
Yeah.
probably why they resisted. And same for the child, man. And I've been there. Like I grew up with African parents, and a lot of the resistance I used to feel was because my parents would tell me things that they wanted me to do that I quite frankly didn't want to do. Right. And
Mm.
so they failed to realize that I was not in the driver's seat of making the decision to do the thing that I wanted to do. And
Mm.
so
Yeah.
it's an interesting concept, man, because even in an adult life, right? Like I have a company and I have 18 people that work for us. And it's interesting. Like we have these conversations about where we need to take things and where we need to go. And I am working to be more mindful about really understanding that while these people work for me, it's not in my best interest or theirs to tell them what to do.
Mm.
I had a conversation
Yeah.
with my head of HR and my head of production the other day, and it was such a beautiful conversation because we were talking about what we needed to do next. But instead of me going, "All right, like you should go do this," I was like, "Well, do you think that's the right move? Like,
Oh, I
what are
love
your
that.
thoughts?"
Yeah.
Because that's honestly their task. Like I am no good. I know as the head of the company, like it's my job to sort of lead and to sort of steer, but I am not an implementer. At the end of the day, that's why we hire them. Like that's their task. So how do you give people the ownership to do what they need to do, understanding that
Mm.
that is really the crux of having and maintaining great interpersonal relationships, which is what this book talks about. So yeah, man. I mean, from a professional standpoint, that was like something that came up for me this week, and there was some personal stuff there that we can get into if you want. But yeah,
Wow.
man, it's an interesting mindset shift. How do you think about it, bro?
Yeah, no, that's very intriguing because like I've also had experiences and in the past, like whether it be like parents or like, managers or like other people in my life, and like they've told me like, hey, like you should go do this or you should go do that, right? And I think like it's, one, I want to sympathize and say, hey, it's difficult sometimes as a leader because you can get this impression that like everything is your responsibility. But like as what you said, you're kind of taking on other people's tasks in that regard. But I think it's also important to say, hey, like, as a leader, like it's good to empower people so they can make their own decisions. Because I know that like when you are following someone as a child to a parent relationship or an employee to a boss, if you're constantly just like, following all of their actions, when there's a failure, who are you going to blame, right? If you, listen to your parents and say you go down this route and then you end up not being happy, you just end up pointing a finger at that person saying, wow, this person told me to do this
Yeah.
and now I'm unhappy. So it creates
Right.
this like lack of accountability or ownership for
Mhm.
decisions.
Yeah.
And then like, at the end of the day, like I've seen so many people that like they get to a place in life and there isn't that person that's telling them where to go next or what to think or what to eat. And they're
Mhm.
just lost because like
Mhm.
it creates this like dependency if you're constantly just trying to like as a parent or as a boss almost micromanage people's entire lives and
Yeah.
all decisions.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the reality of that is too as well is that like I believe that at the end of the day like I don't know what's right for you. I can speculate, I can like maybe add some input or advice from my own life and tell what I've done, but I think at the end of the day we all have to decide what's right for us as individuals
Yeah.
because one
Yeah.
path that we may follow or one path that we may see is like there's obviously some validity and like us being humans we go through the same experiences, but like not everyone should be eating the same things, not everyone should be doing the same workouts. Like it's just
Yep.
there's so much
Yep.
variability in life. And I really see it as like we have to kind of create or be the author of like our own story.
Yeah, 100%. And that really like segues nicely into this concept of horizontal versus vertical relationships that we'll probably talk
Mm,
about in a little bit. But like,
yeah.
when you're looking at things from a vertical perspective, it's like boss employee or parent
Mhm.
child, right? And that's where we become disillusioned and we tend to speak from our pedestal down upon the person, prescribing them what we feel is best for them. But if we can bring things into a horizontal stratosphere, you know, employee, boss, child, parent, we're actually all on the same level,
Mm,
right?
mhm.
And that way
Mm,
it actually gives us some unilateral sort of perspectives from which we can say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna come alongside you here, like let's figure this thing out. What do you think?
yeah.
Here's what I've seen. What are you seeing? Here's why I think it might be good for me to study because of my experiences, but I'm curious how you feel about that for you, because I actually
Yeah.
don't know if my advice can help you, because I'm not you. So that's interesting. And we can go narrow and deep on that there in a little bit. But to come back to your previous point, I love what you said about, you know, the conversation of releasing accountability and
Mm,
of
mm,
of of putting people in a position to where they are not, and I'm paraphrasing your words, where they are not sort of equipped to really lean into their own faculties to make decisions for themselves. And I think
mhm.
that's a lot of what's wrong with society these days is there is such a lack of accountability right? That people immediately run to the closest scapegoat when things aren't
Oh
going
yeah.
well in their lives.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So like, I know a lot
1,000%.
of
Yeah.
people, we live in very interesting economic times right now. And I know a lot of people are, maybe struggling in their own way and maybe going back to times where when they were coming up in school or in their family sort of relationship dynamics, it could be easy to bring up old thoughts of, well, we never spoke about personal finance.
Hmm.
I wasn't trained or taught how to deal with these things. And that might objectively be truth or fact.
Yeah. Yeah.
But here's the thing: truth and fact are not the same thing, though. So like that may be a fact, like hey, you just weren't educated on personal finance, as an example.
Hmm.
But if you're like drowning and you're like not doing well, and you're just like blaming it on the economy or the government or freaking just your parents that never taught you,
Yeah.
and then telling yourself, and this is where Freudian psychology comes in, telling yourself that I'm drowning because of X, Y, and Z, instead of maybe embracing a truth that is, hey, I'm drowning right now, but I could probably like figure this out. I could probably like get a mentor or read a book
Yeah.
or go on
Yeah.
YouTube. You're coming at it from a completely like wrong perspective. And I think that's one of the
Ooh.
biggest challenges for society right now, man. So it's
Yeah.
interesting you brought that up.
No, I really love how you mentioned that, and especially like highlighted on the Freudian psychology part of that, because this I think the book described this in such an intriguing way. Like Freudian psychology is like essentially like cause and effect, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, um I my parents like were not healthy. They, had diabetes and high blood pressure, so that's why I have high blood pressure. Or like,
Right. Right.
I lack social skills and I'm not attractive. That's why like I, don't have an intimate partner. But with Adlerian psychology, which is what this, book is really like going through, it's like, there is like a certain identity that we want to prove or a certain like effect that's happening. And then we go and find the cause of that essentially to like justify the position that we're in. So instead of thinking, oh, like Freudian psychology is like, oh, I'm unattractive and I have not lack social skills, so that's why I don't have an intimate partner. That's Freudian. Adlerian is more so like, okay, I have this fear of going out and putting myself out there and finding an intimate partner. So I create this identity of I don't have social skills or I am, unattractive, which, I could, I've met a lot of people that say they may not have social skills, but then if you put them next to the right people, they're very social.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know, you put them next to their family, you put them next to like a close friend, they're gonna, talk a lot. Or, I meet the same people that say, hey, like,
Whoa,
you
that's
know,
interesting.
right?
That's interesting. And the book goes narrow and deep on that. Sorry to cut off your thought
Yeah,
there.
no, please, yeah.
It's like we will anchor ourselves to sort of an inferior level to try to
Hmm.
protect ourselves from something that hasn't even happened. So somebody, to use your
Yeah,
example,
yeah.
somebody like thinking to themselves prior to a party, oh man, I'm just not that social. I'm not that interesting, whatever they're telling themselves.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, again, that is not truth. It might be a fact that, like, in one particular setting at a party years ago or months ago or however long ago in their past, like they felt that way, they experienced that. But them telling themselves that oftentimes is derived as a sort of protective mechanism, if you
Hmm.
will,
Hmm.
for not wanting to be in a position where they feel like they're not connecting with someone interpersonally at a
Yeah.
party that they're getting ready to go to. And so if you're walking around telling yourself that you're socially awkward, like be willing to actually dig in a little bit deeper as to where that's coming from. It may just be
Hmm.
you trying to protect yourself from a quote unquote future rejection. So
Yeah.
that way you can go, oh, you see, I told myself I'm just socially awkward. That's why that person
Yeah.
didn't engage or whatever. And that's why I love the concepts that this book goes into, because the big North Star of the book is to be truly free. And I have a little like quote here. I said, to
Yeah.
have freedom is to be at peace with being disliked in your interpersonal relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Said another way, you go to this party, you meet a person and they're just not really vibing with you. All right, that's cool. Keep it moving. And to
Yeah.
actually have peace with that is where true freedom comes from.
Yes. Wow. That's so powerful. And like, just talking about that piece on interpersonal relationships, like we move through the world. And one of the biggest things that I believe all of us have as humans, it's like an inherent, like, evolved is like wanting to be accepted by the group, right? And that's like something that like evolved. Like we want to be accepted by the group that we're in, because like if you look at thousands and millions of years ago, like if we were excluded or ostracized from the group, that usually meant that we were going to be at risk for a lot of things. We may not be able to find food, like we're not going to be, find a mate, all these different things. So like there's this inherent like need for people to be accepted by the group, right? And so in modern society, though, we don't have nearly as many of the same dangers as we do millions of years ago, but we still have this need to be accepted. And so that need creates this like desire to be liked by like every group.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's
And
exhausting.
yeah, it's exhausting. I think you and I both have been in that space where like we at times had like that people pleaser kind of
Okay.
mentality.
Let's
Like,
get real with them. Now
like,
let's get real with them. Give us some
yeah,
truth moments. Give us an
yeah.
example from your life where this might be happening right now.
Okay, absolutely. Absolutely. So I would say that for me, the last time I had like a people pleaser mentality, okay, this was probably with me and my practice in my business. I had this like people pleasing mentality, and I never wanted to, you know, like set up a boundary between me and like the people that I was like working with. So it may be like, me being contacted at like, 9 o'clock at night, or me like, being contacted on weekends, or like, you know, being asked to do things that aren't actually, my specialty, and things along those lines. So because I had this desire to just be liked by every single person I would like interact with, just because I had a fear of like, if I told someone, hey, like I work between 10 to 5, that's when you should be reaching out to me. And if it's not then I'll get back to you the next day. Because I had that fear, it started to get exhausting for me, because I was constantly just giving, and I work with hundreds of people. I was constantly just giving, 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 trying to be liked by every single one of my clients 24/7. It's like that just created this like draining feeling, inside me. And I've faced the same thing, in work as well too. Like, you know, I was actually just recently left my company, started my own company, and I realized for the last couple of years while I was there, my identity slowly started to change over time, because I wanted to fit into this group. And there were some things, just my kind of natural free spiritedness. Naturally, I am a little adventurous. I'm a little cross or bohemian a bit, a little countercultural, for lack of a better
Yeah,
term.
you are.
So, in that way that I acted, I realized like, hey, this net didn't necessarily fit in that box of being a financial advisor at my last company. And like, so I started to like change my personality to fit in. And I eventually realized like, wow, I'm changing into this person that I don't even recognize, because I just want to be, liked by everyone else.
Yeah.
And I want to be really, yeah, I didn't want to rock the boat with any relationship. I just want everyone to be smiling, happy with those different things. And the weird thing is like when you want to be liked by someone else or everyone else, you realize that it's impossible. And even if you're gonna lose yourself on that journey, like you're gonna lose who you are if you want to be liked by everyone else. And the reality is that not everyone is gonna even like you.
Yeah.
Like, there's still gonna be people out there that don't like you as much as you want to try. So I realized like, wow, it's why not do the thing I want to do, which was for me, again, starting my own venture, be more authentic to myself, have
Mhm.
that courage to be disliked. And then at the end, I realized that like me actually doing the things that I want to do that I truly believe in, I feel better, I feel happier, and I'm actually more liked by the people that are authentically supposed to be in my circle. And the people that aren't there, like, I know, that I was just putting on like a pose for them. So yeah.
That's amazing, man. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Talk about what you feel like you had to give up in order
Mm,
to attain this new sense of freedom and authenticity. Because I think that's like a big sticking
yeah.
point for a lot of people is like, but what do I have to give up? Because inevitably
Hmm.
you do have to leave something or someone behind.
Yeah. 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 So, I would say like the fear, like I was giving up I was giving up predictability. I was giving up like what I already knew.
Mm,
Right? I think that's one of the biggest things. And like we naturally want to, understand how our day is going to go. We naturally like, have relationships and we like knowing how those relationships, are
hmm
going to continue to progress.
hmm
And we like just like things being fairly consistent, even if it's not optimal, like we
hmm
like predictability. So
Right.
there's naturally a fear when we introduce any type of change. If you're like, hey, like, maybe you should go out and start dating again, that's unknown. There's an
Right.
inherent fear there. You should go out there and, go out on your own venture, start your own company. There's inherent fear there. So there's all this like unknowns out there because we're like following our own path. I gave up security. I gave up like predictability. I gave up that feeling, whether it's false or not, probably it's false, but like that feeling of safety. So
I'm just getting giddy over here because I'm so proud
yeah.
of you, and I've lived all of that and continue to. But where my mind
Mhm.
goes, I'm just highlighting one of my notes here. It's like,
Yeah.
how do we start to regain? And I say regain because I believe we're all born with this. It's a
Hmm.
fondness and a curiosity and a desire to have new experiences.
Mm.
When we're
Hmm.
children, we're growing so much. I was with my business partner recently, a couple weeks ago, and he just had a baby like a few months ago. I think she's 7 months old. And you
Mm.
just see her like looking around and just like taking in this environment and like pushing her edge and like trying to
Yeah.
do things and falling and and it's like somewhere along the way, like we as humans stagnate. And as you mentioned, we start to prioritize familiarity and predictability, even if it's something that we're not happy with. And the
Hmm.
way out of that, as you recently realized, is to give it up, right?
Yeah.
Is to say, you know what? I'm going to operate off of an infinite mindset and trust that there is possibly more out there. There are new people out there that I can serve and have newfound experiences with that
Mm.
get me
Hmm.
more in line with who I really am. And to me, man, it just kind of comes down to having a courage to be curious. I'm a do a
1,000%.
little play on the book's title. It's a courage to be curious. What
Uh,
more could be in existence outside of your bubble? And this is where I was lucky. Honestly, I was lucky because I was 26, 27 in a job that defined me, that was very predictable and familiar and making more than I knew what to do with at the time. And fortunately, it happened for me early in life because I was like, well, if I've already hit this in kind of like the first quarter of my life, there's like still 3 more quarters to go.
yeah.
Like, what more is out there? Certainly, this just can't be the only story or the only play we're going to continue to run. Because
Yeah.
if you think about it as like a game, you keep running the same play, your oppositions of is sooner than later going to pick up on the play that you're running and just like shut it down.
1000%. Yeah, 1000%. Yeah.
So I just reached a place where I was like, you know what, man, I'm gonna get a little uncomfortable, because the worst that's gonna happen is like I'm just gonna like fall. But fortunately, I still have 3 quarters to like make it back. And so
Yeah.
I'm just really passionate about helping people have more of that macro perspective, wherever it
Mm.
might be that they find themselves in life, to realize that, time can be on their side if they're willing to look at it as something that is a friend. And what I mean by that is, if you can get more intentional about your time and focus more on the quality of your time, whether it be people you're spending time with, things you're doing, but focus more on the quality of it. It doesn't really matter how much of it you have, because let's face it, bro, there are a lot of people who live a whole life, right? Like 90 plus years, but they never actually discovered who they were.
Mm-hmm.
They never actually, dared to like leave the pack.
Yeah.
And the pack is typically how people identify themselves to come into being. And so are those really quality of years?
Yeah, I would say they're not. And I think that's so interesting. Because like what I've found is that like, if you are uh not actually considering like the decisions you make, and like really consciously like making the choice to be who you are. And that's like, I think that's a pretty like grand idea essentially. Like, how many of us are really choosing our lives as opposed to following like either a path that was designed by society, go to school, get married, white picket fence, good job, kids, or they're by their parents, go become a doctor, same kind of, thing, right? How many of us are actually consciously making a choice as to who we are? And like, what I believe is that like, if you're not consciously making these choices to be who you are, I think it's very difficult to actually really be happy. Like, I feel like that's like one of the like such a big thing. Like now it's like, if because so many people are like looking for others to create the path for them. They're looking on the outside saying, how can I figure this out? And
Yeah.
I've definitely done that before. Like I've looked for like, all the mentors, teachers, and guides
Right.
to tell me
Right.
where I
Right.
need to go. What do I need to do?
Dude.
And like almost like, and I found myself in this position like, all right, like, am I even making these choices because I want to be here? I want to do these things.
Yeah.
And I feel like I went through, I mean, we talked about this. I went through, months of just trying to figure out like, hey, like, am I following the right paths? Am I doing the right things? And I had to do a lot of internal work to actually, really make these choices for myself and start to realize, okay, what are the choices I've made that haven't been mine, really?
Yeah.
And how can I like, take advice but not take direction?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
how can I continue to follow down this path and make
Dude,
my own choices? Like,
here it is, man.
yeah,
I realized this the other day doing the Peloton at 5 in the morning. It's just, at some point you can look and seek, and we've all been there. We listen to podcasts. I mean, if you're listening to this, like Kofi and we're just here to have a conversation that you might find
yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's, but at some point you just got to put yourself in the game of life and
Mm,
learn on the field. That's it. I honestly was like drowning in self-help and personal development. Lewis Howes here, Andy Frisella there, Ed
mhm,
Milet. It's like, dude, all these people, it's great to listen to them because they're inviting conversations that you typically wouldn't have access to. And they've done some things along their path, and having
mhm.
experience give them a little bit more of a broader spectrum, but they're not you.
Yeah,
So quit looking to them for the magic bullet.
yeah.
And that's how a lot of people are thinking too. It's like a magic, there is no magic bullet.
Nope.
This is the number one thing that even I, in my journey so far, I just turned 32 last week. This is what I have been fully embracing, is that like, you know what, man, You have everything within you, bro or girl, whoever's listening to them or listening
Hmm.
to this right now. You just got to be willing to like do the thing to like have it come out and express itself. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And that's what this whole book is talking about. Because inevitably, as you start to have these experiences and do the thing, you're going to have to leave people behind. You're going to have to tolerate your pack not understanding and then thus possibly not liking you as much anymore. You know what I mean? You might even be confused and lost at times, but that's okay. Like you are creating your own path.
Yes.
And that's the essence of having a autotelic life, or is that what they call it? Telepathic life, whatever that term is in the book. Basically, where you are at one with your being and you are doing the thing not to get to some, selfish desired endpoint that's typically defined by external influences. No, you're doing the thing because it's aligned with your being and you wanting to do the thing.
Mm.
That's it. That
Yeah.
literally is it. So I dare you. I triple dog dare you to Kofi's coffee brand. Isn't that what it's called? Triple dog coffee?
Yeah. Triple dog. That's the new brand right there. We're going through some branding right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. No, that you're so spot on with that. And I truly believe that like, if we're following our own path, like that's how we can truly be happy and like also be understanding and have this awareness that like you are gonna feel like you're lost when you're following your own path. It's just natural. Like if you
Yep.
go out and explore a forest and there's like this natural little path that like you've taken every single time, yeah, like you're gonna go down the path, you're gonna know where to turn, you're gonna do all the things, and you're not really gonna feel lost. But you
Yeah.
also may feel like, hey, like, is this really a cool path? You might not discover anything new. It's just gonna be the same old, same old. But if you're just like, hey, like, let me get this machete, cutting down branches, doing my own thing, you might get 20, 30 feet out, and you're like, I don't know where the heck I am. I don't know. But along that path, you're probably going to see some new things. You're probably going to experience, your own, desired, outcome, whether or not you know
Yeah.
it. But you are going to create something that is yours
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that you are actually, doing. And then I think that's a way to truly live a unique and special life. So I
Yep.
love that.
Yep.
I
Yep.
love
Well, cool, man.
um,
I think we beat that one over the head in
we
terms
did.
of this separation of tasks.
Yeah. So you mentioned it before. I definitely want to, because I think this is so important, horizontal and vertical relationships.
Yep. Yep.
Dude, dude, when I like came across this in the book, I can tell you my mind was absolutely blown and it like changed my life. When I started like seeing things as like, change it from being a vertical relationship to a horizontal relationship.
Mm,
And I realized that for me, so let me, we kind of touched on it before, but just to go back over the differences,
yeah.
as opposed to thinking like, okay, like, boss and, employee. In a vertical relationship, this person is superior to this person, superior, inferior. This person tells that person what to do. And, that naturally just creates this dynamic of like, superiority and inferiority, like
Sure.
because someone's at a higher level. And if you're
Sure.
looking at everything in a vertical inferior relationship, like people are either vertical to you or they're, inferior. That's
Yep.
like just the way you see life.
Yep.
Horizontally, everyone's pretty much on the same playing field. And like, as you said, like we're both on the same side of the table, figuring out how can we, approach life in the same manner and how can we like, find the answer to this problem, but we're both, on equal playing fields. We just may have different skills and different talents.
100%.
And looking at life horizontally for me, like I have a lot of like self-esteem and self-confidence issues.
Really?
And I really, oh yeah. Like, I would get into situations and I would just feel like, man, like, can I really do this? Like, and that's what I think drove me to always ask questions, always ask for advice. And I just never really trusted my own opinion.
Mm,
I would always try to ask and, especially being an advisor, like, man, like, what? Yeah, there's a lot of times I have to ask and, just, kind of search for the answer just because like, I always kind of, because of the way I looked at life, vertical, superior, and inferior. I always felt inferior and I felt like I had to constantly ask and search for the answer. But then I started looking at things like horizontally, like, when I talk to my like coaches or when I talk to my bosses or I talk to, managers, or if I talk to someone that's, younger than me, seeing them on a level playing field and seeing it as like this person has, maybe certain skills and knowledge that, I don't have, but I also have skills and knowledge they don't have. And how
Right.
can we work together in order to like, I don't know, solve a certain problem or do a certain thing? And
Yeah.
looking at life in that way, like my feelings of, my self-esteem, my self-confidence, like just changed
Yeah.
because I stopped feeling inferior to
Yeah. Oh
others.
my
Like,
gosh.
man,
This is so good. Everybody, I hope that you guys pick up this book, audio or
yeah.
Kindle or whatever. This book is so for me, my mind was also blown, but more so from a spiritual slash biblical perspective.
Mm,
I I'm really bad with memorizing Bible verses, but I am very spiritual and I believe in God. And I was reading a verse that was basically talking about how all of us as human beings are a part of the same body, you know,
hmm,
Christ body of God or whatever. But similar to a physical body, we all have different parts. Or, sorry, we're all different parts that play different roles. So if
yeah.
you think about like a physical body, like you have your eyes that help you see, you have your hands that help you feel stuff. And what's wrong in society these days is, Kofi, you could be an eye and I could be a hand, right? And you could
Mhm.
see like my hands touching stuff. Like maybe it's like, oh
Yeah,
man,
yeah.
his hands have so much cash. You know, his hands
Oh,
have so much
yeah.
cash. He's got a beautiful girl he can touch, and you're like, I want to be a hand.
Yeah, right.
Similarly, I could see
Yeah.
you as the eye, and like you're like, in the islands, because you're in the islands, or you were in Vegas recently, you have beautiful views around.
Mhm,
I'm like, well, I want to be an eye. And you
mhm.
fail to realize is like, no, Kofi being an eye and Carl being a hand, they played two different roles that serve the greater good of the body.
Mm,
And if
mhm.
Kofi is busy trying to be me, a hand, and he's taking his eye off of keeping our body moving forward,
Yeah,
we're all fucked. And
facts.
and if I
Uh,
take my hands off of what a hand is supposed to do because I'm trying to be an eye, we're likely to just keep our hand on the stove too long because I'm falling asleep at the wheel.
yeah,
So the body as a whole is fucked.
yeah.
People need to realize that you were made and created for a specific purpose. And
Mhm.
we need to stop looking at those purposes as a direct comparison to somebody else's individual purpose.
Yeah.
It's not an apples to apples or an oranges to oranges game. And
Mm.
so, back to the point of the book, that hopefully removes this vertical perspective or this, you know, that person's role is more superior to mine or I'm more inferior to that. But like that should hopefully eradicate that because again, and it goes back to your tasks. If you can separate your tasks and you can get clear on what your tasks are and you can own them and you can fulfill them, then you're doing your role, man or
Yeah.
girl. And like that's what we're put here to do. And the book talks about community as well.
Mhm.
Like the health of the community rests on you as an individual doing your task. I'm not meant to be a financial advisor. That's Kofi. And if Kofi advises the hell out of people's finances, then they have opportunities to work with me. I'm a media guy, so I
Mhm.
can help get them in front of more people that will ultimately help them make more money. And that's how the body comes
Mm.
together.
Yeah.
I shouldn't I shouldn't be envious of Kofi's ability to financially advise because that is to take me away from my ability to
Mhm.
help people be more visible in their
Mm.
market
Yeah.
and vice versa. Kofi should not be envious of my ability to help people be more visible
Mhm.
and take away from his ability to advise them on where they should be putting their dollars or
Mm.
whatever.
Yeah.
So like quit trying to be everybody and focus on being you is basically what this is saying.
I love that. Wow. That is, I mean, and you can see it played out in like, many different arenas too, right? Like you look at any sports team, right? You could take a classic, football team, right? If all 11 players want to be the quarterback, you're not winning any games. Like, there's no way you can, go out there and play the best game as a team if everyone wants to play the same position. But if someone's like, hey, I want to be the best right guard, I want to be the best left tackle, I want to be the best tight end, I want to be the best wide receiver, and focusing on being like the best in the world at like what you do, like you serve society in such a more
Mhm.
powerful way. And like,
Yep.
this is one of my, I guess it's one of my biggest like disagreements with a lot of like I think a lot of people get into this. I think millennials and people that are younger generations do it more because we're more into social media. But a lot of people like see like the next fad or something like that, and
Yep.
they want to do that thing. Like they want to be a cryptocurrency millionaire, then they want to be a real estate professional, then they want to be a you know uh, Amazon direct shipment person, but they
Yep.
forget that
Yep.
they have this gift.
Yep.
And if you focus on your gift and how you can show be the best in the world at what you do or what you're doing, like
Hmm.
you can be like you'll be so much happier, you'll be so much more successful
Yep.
because like you're really focusing on like refining your ability or your thing. And
Hmm.
now I haven't met anyone that's the best in the world at something and is not like extremely successul. Like even
Right.
if you're like, it doesn't have to be a status thing. Like you could be the best gardener in the world.
Yeah.
Like,
100%.
yeah,
But dude, like think about what being the best gardener can produce in terms of value. Like
facts.
every time somebody comes out and steps out on their lawn and they're like, oh man, look at that beauty. Or
Hmm.
people walk by and they take that in. Like that is such a value. And it's tough, right? Because in society, in interpersonal dynamics, there is this hierarchy, which is what this book is looking to debunk, right? There is this
Hmm.
hierarchy in our mind. I was having this conversation with my cousin who lives out in the Netherlands, and they
Yeah.
have this interesting educational system where, like in high school, you can do something called gymnasium, and it's not like our gymnasium, but it's like where you basically go and learn a trade, like
Hmm.
a truck or being a woodworker. And then
Yeah.
other kids who have demonstrated, I guess, higher mental aptitude can go for university where they like, pretty much become like a white collar person.
Yeah.
And my cousin was telling me how like one of her sons was thinking about like going and learning a trade. And she was having a conversation with one of like the other moms at the school who was like, oh, like, but like, our kid's going for university and don't you want to push your kid to go towards university? And my cousin was like noticing how that feeling of that inferiority was coming up because her kid
Mm.
wanted to go be a woodworker or whatever. And she said she had to like literally like take a moment and step back and be like, no, I mean, it's noble to be a woodworker.
Yeah.
Think about how many things in our home are made out of wood from woodworkers.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's like we just have to find a way to like detach from this stigma of
Yeah. Yeah.
certain profession being spoiled or for a lower socioeconomic group, and that socioeconomic group that is quote unquote lower is somehow bad. And it's a difficult
Yeah.
thing because
Yeah.
we've been programmed to not see it that way.
1,000%. And if I could give people like advice or takeaways on this, like I would say, like, one, like focus on like spending some time with yourself. Like focus on really like, making sure like, whether it be like, once a day you're like meditating or like, once a week you're like taking a walk or going on a hike or just doing something where you're with yourself. That way you at least get some time or space where you're not constantly being pulled in a direction from other people. And if you're with yourself, like I would highly encourage you to not be on social media during that time because you're still not really with yourself. Like truly be by yourself for some period of time. Then like, and this takes time. And I believe that we, don't like, necessarily find our like purpose, but like we really just uncover it. Like it's something that's within us. We just have to uncover, but like, really work on like figuring out like who you are, what are the things that you like, and how you can cultivate that and show up in the world doing that thing. Like I know for me, I love building relationships. I love helping people out. I love service. That's why being a financial advisor, really worked well. I just found like an outlet for things I was already, truly, passionate about. And then like also understand that like, everything that you like are going to do, like nothing is perfect. Like no, there's no career, there's no relationship, there's no path that's like perfect. Like you're not gonna go on a path and be like, I love everything about this. This is amazing and all this stuff. And I find that so many people like they go down a path, then they have one little hookup or one little road bump and they just get discouraged and like, I mean, I need to change now because this happened, or I need to change because this happened. Have like a level of commitment to say, hey, I'm going to choose this. And, I am going to, once the storm comes, I'm going to continue to go down this path and see this through because frankly, like the darker the storm, the brighter the sunshine. That's what I realized. Like, if you can continue and persevere through something, through like the, moments that may not be, that great, at the end you honestly end up like every time in my life I've done that, I've ended up having something that's even greater. And it may even be like be okay with saying, hey, like when you reach those hard times, like maybe at the end you get through those hard times and then you like take lessons from it. And maybe you may use those lessons in another space. But just when it starts getting hard, just continue to persevere through it. Like don't quit once something's like a little uneasy or just when so, like, it just doesn't really feel that right. Like if you can continue and really stick to that thing and commitment, wow, like that's such a powerful thing, actually being committed to something. Like,
Yeah. Last thing I'll say, that's so beautifully said, Kof. The last thing I'll
yeah.
say is commitment in and of itself is a direct pathway to freedom.
Mm,
When you commit, when you decide, you cut off all other options or possibilities.
yeah.
You also cut off, you also cut off the possibilities of not failing or sorry, of failing rather. Right? Like think about it. Like when you're chasing all these different balls, right? You're more likely to be in a position to get none, which I would call the failure, and then the game is over. Whereas if you commit to a game, even if you have a series of plays where you don't have the ball in your hand or the ball doesn't go in the hoop, depends what kind of game it is, but you're
Mm-hmm.
like, this is the game I'm playing, the likelihood of you actually getting the ball in the hole or catching the ball and getting some yardage, whatever the game is, that increases. And so that is a direct corollary to your ability to have success.
Facts.
So
Yeah.
that's all I got.
Man,
But
I
I
love
hope
it.
that helps some people. And this is, yeah, it's tough stuff. I've been that person that's been all over, and I just
Mm-hmm.
always found that I was at greater conflict within myself. What am I supposed to be doing? What am I supposed to be doing? Versus
Yeah.
like just like say, you know what? I'm writing this out and I'm gonna keep on showing up and looking at the quote unquote failures or losses as something that's actually preparing me for the glory that's coming.
Facts.
That completely changed it for me. So
Yeah.
I hope that helps some people. Kofi, this has been really good, man.
Dude.
You're like you're such a sage, Kofi.
Oh my gosh, man, I learned from the best, my guy. I learned from the best.
Well, cool. When are we doing this again? Let's tell the people what they should expect.
Yeah, yeah. So, we're really trying to make these like, every couple weeks, I know that you and I are both, super, super busy. So we're trying to go like weekly to bi-weekly, keep on like doing it, releasing videos and everything. So, we'll be doing a couple, we may do like a video or more, on the, Courage to be a Slight, kind of wrap that up. And then, we'll dive into another exciting book just to, you know,
Yeah.
change things up a little bit, help
Right.
us
Yeah. yeah,
So
I can't wait for like tying this up for people and hopefully providing a couple of actionables that they can
yeah,
take and put in their life. If you're seeing this as we're still reviewing the book, can't can't urge you enough. And again, it's your task, not mine.
yeah,
to
right.
consider checking it out. You know, we don't earn anything from you doing it or not. And yeah, I look forward to what we're gonna pick up next, Kofi. I feel like it's helping me out in my day to day. So
Same here,
I'm very
brother.
excited.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you for joining us for another episode of Coffee with Karl and Kofi. This has been absolutely awesome spending some time with you guys here. And yeah, we're looking forward to the next time we can hop on and have some, very intriguing conversations and drink some very nice coffee.
Peace, y'all.
Have a good one.